Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. Before we get started in today's video, Blizzard have graciously given us 10 virtual tickets for Blizzcon to give away to you lovely guys that are watching. There's a Gleam IO link in the description with the way to enter this. Not only do you get to see all of the cool stuff at Blizzcon such as Muse Live, which is amazing, but you also get some cool stuff along with the Winston Blizzcon skin. So it doesn't hurt to enter, there's so much stuff you get for it. And Blizzcon this year is looking to be something pretty amazing, so do check that out. And thanks again for Blizzard for supplying us these tickets. So today I want to talk about a particular thing, and that is triple queuing. Stacking in Overwatch, as certainly more than 2 people, can cause quite a few problems with matchmaking, and you can end up in some pretty weird games. At least that was before. For those that have been watching the likes of Sinatra or Tavik at the highest tiers on Twitch, for example, you're seeing that they maybe sometimes jump into bigger groups of players. Now we want to go into detail why that may be, what exactly happens in these games, and why it's better to queue with 3 people as opposed to 4 or 2. We'll start with going over why the pros are doing it, but also go over our little experiment that we tried, whether in our SRs and in other SRs as well, if it's worth actually grouping up in a 3, and whether your games are a lot better, and also talking about the urban myth that if you're in a group and you lose more SR as well. So for the most part, if you group up in a big stack, you tend to play against higher SR players. If you 6 stack and the matchmaker can't put you up against another 6 stack, it might put you with a group of 4 and a group of 2, but they'd be a lot higher SR, maybe by 50 or 100, to try and make the game more balanced. The matchmaker knows that you're going to be more coordinated if you're in a 6 stack, so it tries to put you against higher skilled players, or at least by SR margins at least. 6 stacking is incredibly fun, but you end up waiting a while for a game, and the games are very rarely that balanced. But in groups of 3 and 4, you tend to run into the same thing. Now let's use the example of Sinatra. He's like a 4.5, 4.6k rated player, but every game that he tends to play, he's the highest skill rated player in his team, and the average SR of his team and the enemy's team tends to be about 4.2, 4.3, meaning that there's a lot of people in sort of GM or even some that are in high masters in his game, and essentially he's been pulled down to a level where he needs to carry. He can't rely on his teammates a lot. Whilst he has skilled players to beat in the likes of GM, they're not on the same level as a pro player or a top 500 player. It's kind of like the video we did where we spoke about what a Korean pro said in regards to making sure that players are within 150 SR from one another to avoid these games where he's the highest player on his team and he has to shot call and essentially babysit for his team because he's a lot more skilled and more versatile than some of the players on his group. Not to mention that some of these might be Symmetra, one tricks and all of that jazz, so of course it gets quite frustrating in that regard. But what happens when Sinatra groups with another 2 pros? Most certainly one that plays a tank and a support as well, when it means that he has a lot more control over the game, and whilst he will be placed with other 4.2, 4.3 players, he knows that he can rely on at least 2 other people on his team to get the job done. And it's like I said before, if you group up with a group of 3 to 4 people, you tend to go up against higher SR enemies. But the issue is, if these are like the top 500 or top 10 in their region, some of them, there isn't going to be many people that are going to be better than them. And to be honest, they probably want that competition as well. So really, for the players that are at the top of the league, there isn't a reason not to triple stack at this point. 6 stacking, you're going to be waiting a long time for these games to happen, and the matchmaker is just going to really not know what to do. But certainly having a group of 3 to 4, or even like a duo queue now and again, tends to work a lot better because you at least have somebody to rely on in your group. Not to mention that if you're triple stacking, you're taking up 50% of the team, meaning that you're reducing the amount of chance that you're going to get a one trick on your side, and it may end up on the enemy's team instead. So you have a lot of control over the game when you're doing this. The matchmaker can't put you against higher tiered players because you are the top of the tree. So it does its best, and you tend to go up against equally minded players instead of being the big fish in a small pond, so to speak. I also asked Tavik if there's any other reason really to do it, and he just said that the games are a lot more competitive and a lot more fun, and of course, again, to avoid some of the people that you may find in solo queue competitive. So now we have a good idea why we're seeing pros do it and why it's effective. Does it apply to lower SRs? If you're in gold, if you group up with friends at your level, will you have a much better time? Well, we actually tried it for a couple of nights, and for the most part it was pretty successful. It was certainly a lot more fun than solo queue, surprisingly. I queued with one amongst many, did a game with another guy called Buckle, who's a streamer which you should check out, but also a sub of ours called Hansi. We essentially just went in with the sort of 2-2 setup. I was going to play tank, Josh was going to be on DPS, and Hansi was going to be on Mercy Watch. For the most part it meant that we could be quite flexible. Some of the footage you're seeing on screen, I actually played Diva because having a group to sort of back you up makes you feel a little bit more versatile and free to try other things out. out. I wouldn't like to necessarily pick D.Va up in solo queue because I don't really have the support and I don't feel like I really have the backing like I do when I'm playing with two of my friends. But the main thing that I noticed ultimately were the teams that were much more balanced. 2-2-2 setups, which are quite often quite difficult to get hold of in solo queue, seem to be there almost all of the time. Communication was also a dominating thing. And I think that has a lot to do with if you're talking within your 3 friends in team chat, the rest of your group are feeling a little bit more confident to chime in if you're sort of coming across as very friendly and open. And if you've got a bit of banter there, that's good as well. Everybody's having a laugh and you could have a really good game. People play better when they're having fun. So how were the games? Well, as I said before, we went up against higher SR players or other groups to similar size. For the most part, games were really balanced. There were some games that we lost that were still balanced. Otherwise, we completely dominated some games. They were either stomps on our side or incredibly even. But the main thing was these games were much more competitive. I felt that I was being challenged by playing Winston or D.Va in a lot of these situations. And it certainly felt a lot more rewarding to win some of these games, apart from the stomps because they had a one trick or a lever, that kind of thing. But the games that we did lose, going back onto the start of the video where we said that there is this kind of urban myth that you lose a lot of SR when you lose in a big group, and we really didn't find that the case. For the most part, we were the underdogs going up against other people, so even then we didn't really lose a lot when we did lose, just because our average SR was a little bit lower than the enemies. It seemed to me that we lost the same amount as we would usually, so I don't really think that's strictly true, but that's from my own anecdotal experience. But I just wanted to sort of give this idea to a lot of you. Maybe you have a group that you've maybe been scared to play in a bigger stat for a while because it's been kind of frowned upon, I suppose, and not really been effective. Now is a really good time. I mean, it's the end of a season, but certainly if you want to do that at the start of Season 7, it might be a good opportunity to do that. I also feel that with the games being a lot higher quality, that it's much better for you to improve, and playing Overwatch in a team environment is much better than playing it on your lonesome. So ultimately, I would say that it was pretty successful and we had a good time doing it. But I do think it's a lot more to do with feeling comfortable with the people around you, having a bit of belief in your team to back you up, and certainly when you're communicating with your friends and then you start to communicate with your team, your success seems to be a lot higher than the enemy, especially if they're all stacked on their own and they're not communicating. But let me know what you think in the comments. That's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, really helps out the channel. And until next time, take care. We'll see you then.